looks nice.
Thank you. I paraded with the primary kids, but secondary hasn't seen me, so here it is. Okay, so today we have Miguel. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Miguel is instrumental in setting up the Pico Trail along with twins' parents, right? And he has got lots of knowledge about sustainable tourism and tourism in general, and I heard that he is a very good hiker as well. So yeah, let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Okay, wonderful. Okay, well, it's nice to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me. It's long overdue. I was looking forward to coming. We had a couple of conversations, and there was an opportunity to do that last year, but it didn't happen. So I'm here to talk a little bit about sustainability, sustainable tourism, okay? Let's try to keep it as fresh and dynamic as possible. Some of these concepts, there's a couple of takeaways from this, right? A couple of concepts that I want you to go back and remember and understand and then remember and think about on your own, okay? This is not an academic approach to sustainability, it's more a human approach, all right? So you hopefully will resonate a little bit with what I'm about to tell you and some of the things we're about to discuss, okay? I have a question for you, first of all, is who eats rice and curry with their hands and who eats it with their... Okay, I didn't want to show hands. Sorry, hands. Who eats it with their hands? Hands. That's about, actually about half, just under half the people. The rest of us, including me, eat it with a knife and fork. That's right, okay. Interesting. We'll come back to that in a second. Okay. Tourism, the tourism industry, right? Everybody wants a bit of this action. Why? Because, why is it important for Sri Lanka? Money, for the government, foreign exchange, right? The tourism industry is the fastest way of bringing in foreign currency into the country. Apart from being a direct transfer of wealth from the wealthy to the not so wealthy, immediately, directly. It's a very interesting industry, one of the biggest industries in the world, as you know, employs one of every 10 people in the world, okay? And the tourism industry is extremely important for Sri Lanka. Because Sri Lanka doesn't have a manufacturing base much, right? And the plantation sector, so tea and cinnamon and all of this is also competitive to some degree. So it needs to find its feet, its identity. Who are we? What are we? What do we do? What do we offer the world? We know we offer so much, right? But what we know for sure, we can offer so much, but we know for sure that we have some fantastic places to visit. We have the Cultural Triangle, we have Kandy, we have the Hill Country, we have so much to offer in this island. That we have everything that we need to have a really robust tourism industry. Now, Sri Lanka is targeting... Save it. Does anybody know here how many travelers come to Sri Lanka every year? Or last year, for instance, averages? No? Chop, come on, huh? Not 3, it's about 2 million. All right, 2 million was 2000, but you know, it was close, because until 2019, and then it went down obviously because of COVID and the economic crisis. But we're now sort of in the 1.5 million to 2 million range.
I remember when they were excited about 1 million. I mean, it was a big milestone when they got to 1 million.
Yes.
So 5 million.
It was a big milestone at the time. I remember when I arrived in Sri Lanka, we had 250,000 travelers to Sri Lanka. And that grew that was in 2003, and that grew all the way up to 2019 to 2.3 million. And now, then we went back, and now we're targeting 5 million. So the president comes out and says, we want 5 million tourists. That's, we would like to have much more tourism in the country. Now, of course, when a president or when a minister or when somebody else comes out and says something like this, everybody listens and, the papers write, okay, these are our targets and things like that. But there's a lot to this story, right? 5 million tourists, right? Does anybody know how many tourists visit France or Spain, let's say, or the USA for that matter? They're on the same category, more or less. We're talking about 100 million. 100 million. Now we're 1.5 and we want to get to 5. All right, okay. By the way, France doesn't have a minister of tourism, but it still has 100 million tourists. So the issue here is that Sri Lanka tourism can take different paths to the 5 million. Now everybody wants to grow. I mean, the country has gone through a lot. No, we have had an economic crisis. We have had COVID. We've had lots of problems, and the industry has invested a lot. People want to make returns and things like that, and gain some degree of stability. So, but it depends. There are different roads to 5 million. There are different paths. Okay, and so. 5 million is not 5 million, is not 5 million. 5 million what? 5 million human beings. 5 million people. Right? 5 million people. Now, what is it that we want at the end of the day? At the end of the day, we need our culture, right? Now, why do they come here? They come here to experience our beaches, they come here to experience our culture, they come here to hike, they come here to do activities, bike ride, and so on, and whatever it is that they do. But the most important thing about a destination is its identity, it's its authenticity. You understand? Because at the end of the day, that's what makes this world such a wonderful world, this sort of mosaic of different nationalities, different cultures, different ethnicities. And you know, the Australian government spent $2 million researching one question, and that question is, why do people travel? And the answer to that question was, people travel to experience the differences. People travel to experience the differences. The differences mean to say that what is different? A different culture, or to do something that they have never done before. People travel to experience, even if you're a surfer, you're going to experience the differences because you're coming to experience Sri Lanka and you're going to enjoy the hospitality of Sri Lanka, but also you're going to experience different waves and things like that. People travel to experience the differences. If we are not different, then what? You know, we lose our appeal, we lose our sense of, you know, why people come here, fundamentally. So we need to, in order to make sure that we retain what it is that we are telling the world, you know, come to see us for this, and that. What is it we're looking at? Culture, you know. We're looking at traditional arts and crafts, the batiks or the cinnamon trade or whatever it is that we're doing. We're looking at wildlife. Sri Lanka has 33 endemic birds, I believe. Maybe somebody can correct me. I think something along those lines. Sri Lanka is very well known for its biodiversity, almost as much as I mean, second to Africa, which definitely has, you know, the giraffes and lions and things like that. We don't have in Sri Lanka, but Sri Lanka's national parks, you know, are very are teeming with wildlife. Our forest, this country is a carbon sink, isn't it? Is it not? It's green everywhere you look. How much carbon is being absorbed by all the trees that we see in Sri Lanka every morning? A lot. Do we know how much? Do we know how much by comparison to others? Bhutan knows. Do we know? I don't know how much we're absorbing. How much of this carbon is mitigating the emissions of Dubai and Abu Dhabi? A lot. We don't know how much. So somebody has to go and do that research. We have to protect our oceans. We are an island, so we have to protect our oceans. All of these are the things that people come here for. And here's the first very important point that's coming up, okay? One of the key takeaways to this story. It's our people, right, need to be happy. Need to be happy. Now, I know that some of you guys are going down to Gulf 4 soon, and you're going to be doing some surveys, and you're going to be looking at the tourists, at the shopkeepers and some of the travelers there and things like that. Okay, so here's the thing. In tourism, there's a very important tenet called the Doxy Index. The Doxy Index is essentially how the local populations see tourism. Okay, so how they see tourism. Now, question. Has anybody been to Barcelona, Venice, Paris, all those places? All right, okay. Has anybody read the news lately? How do tourists feel, how do travelers feel about, how do locals feel about tourism in places like that right now? There's a little bit of, you know, the pendulum has kind of shifted from enthusiasm all the way to antagonism. So or at least they don't want who's us? Let's go into that in a minute. But they're done with tourism. They want to curtail it. They want to ring fence it. They don't want as much, right? Okay, so now here in Sri Lanka, right? You go around the island, if you like, and ask the local populations if they're happy with tourism. What do you think they will respond? Do you think they are here, 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 or here? As a general rule, where do you think they are? Where do you think Sri Lankans are with regards to tourism? You think apathy, okay. Apathy, euphoria, yeah, totally. It's totally somewhere between euphoria and apathy, and it depends a little bit on where. So for instance, if you go to Hikalua, you might find people are more apathetic, but if you go to Badula, I can assure you that everybody's absolutely enthusiastic about tourism right now. So, and here's another great question. If you were to, okay, who's been to Thailand? Okay, who's been to Vietnam? Right, okay, cool. You guys have all traveled a little bit around Asia. If I was to ask you, this is hypothetical. How do the people in Vietnam or Thailand see tourists? As a general rule, do you think that Sri Lanka is kind of higher or lower by comparison to Thailand? Higher. Okay, very important. Remember that, okay? If there was a league table, who likes football? The Premier League, La Liga. If there was a league table of destinations in Asia, and the Premier League, right, and the Champions League, 5 that go to the 4 that go to the Champions League, right, were to be selected for their performance on this particular metric, my best guess, I'll put my hat out there, is that Sri Lanka would be going to the Champions League. It would be in the Premier League of destinations by the way locals feel about tourism. And that's not the case in many other destinations. So, and it depends a little bit on the region, as we discussed before. So some regions will see more, some regions will see less. So, okay, so that's how the locals feel about tourism. But let's go to the other side of the coin. How do tourists feel about Sri Lanka? They love it. And 1.5 million tourists, right? If you were to ask them, right, how do they feel about Sri Lanka? Now, of course, I'm sure that most of you are familiar with, or some of you already, with NPS, the Net Promoter Score. The Net Promoter Score is a classic question every company can ask, or even, which you can ask about, just to see if your business is doing well or your product is doing well. Would you recommend Sri Lanka to your friends and family? This is the DOCSI. So this is NPS. NPS is used all the time. What do you think? Would you recommend Sri Lanka to your friends? Like, what do you think? Where do you think we are? Do you think that if you were to do an exit interview, do you think we will have people enthusiastically recommending Sri Lanka, or not so enthusiastically recommending Sri Lanka? Enthusiastically recommending Sri Lanka. That's right. Okay. Okay. So what we have here is we have that second metric, NPS. Okay. So remember, DOCSI and NPS, two sides of the same coin. DOCSI is how the local population see it. NPS is how tourists see the destination. On both metrics, if there was a league table, and if we had to compare destinations in Asia, my best guess is that we are in the Champions League on both metrics, with 1.5 million tourists. Okay, let me stop there for a second. What I have to say about this is that this is perhaps the most important thing, right? If I take away something from this talk, is that those two metrics are really, to be honest, I mean, it's not that the only things that matter, but as tourism grows, right, and you start seeing the impact of tourism in a destination, you will see those two metrics change, right? The locals may start becoming less enthusiastic, and the foreigner and the travelers might start becoming also less enthusiastic about the destination. And yeah, the destination will grow, more people will come, maybe the overall economy grows, but at the very least, and not to mention the impact on the environment and on communities, you have these two things going on. And that is a problem. So, here in Sri Lanka, we tend to be a little bit like we look at each other, like I talk to the government and to the industry and things like that, and everybody's always thinking that we're on our back foot. Everybody's always thinking, you know, things aren't as good as they should be and things like that. You know, we can't seem to grow and things like that. And I want to challenge them all and tell them, please be confident. Right now, you are in the Premier League of destinations by the way people feel about the destination and by the way the locals feel about the destination. And that is so precious that that is what you need to focus on, right? And for that, you need the data that you guys are going to go and collect. And for that, you need then the policies, right? Okay, so now we can move towards 5 million, maintaining those two metrics as high as we possibly can, or we can move towards 5 million, completely sleepwalking into a nightmare. You understand? We will sleepwalk into a nightmare, like Barcelona and these other places have. And if we don't have the intelligence to look at that and see what it is that we need to do, then you know we really have a serious problem, right? The other part is fame and fortune. Indiana Jones, fame and fortune. How much money we're making. Sri Lanka is comparable to Thailand, Vietnam, and all the rest of the countries in how much people are spending every day. $175 a day, more or less on average. So we are basically in the same league as all of them are. Okay? So there's no, you know, it's like, can Sri Lanka become the Maldives and start commanding $500 a day on average? Not really. It's a pie in the sky. There's no way that Sri Lanka can do that. No, because it's a completely different destination. So in that regard, we're in the same level playing field. So we need to find a sustainable path to 5 million, right? And this is where this guy comes in. This is a guy called Stanley Plog. All right, let's go back to the 70s, when mass tourism was born. Stanley Plog, basically, what he did was he wanted to understand travelers' behaviors and motivations, because the key to the road is understanding your motivations to travel, who you are individually, right, and your behavior as a traveler, because you have an impact on conservation and communities. Every time you get your plane and you go somewhere, you need to be thinking very carefully about what it is that you're doing. Much more so than the generation before you, which basically we sleepwalked into this future today, right, where things, you know, are not great in terms of the impact that tourism is having on communities and conservation in other destinations. This guy was looking at this in the 1970s, and he basically looked at each individual and realized that each individual travels for a different reason. No? Okay. So people have different motivations, right? Some of you may be more adventurous, right? Some of you may be more prepared to go outside your comfort zones and travel to destinations that you've never been before that are a little bit rough or whatever it is. Some of you are more confident, you know, like that. Some of you feel that you want to be completely safe because, you know, the thing about the travel industry is that as an industry, what it does is it usually tries to inject a sense of security into the traveler. Book with me, book my package, book with my company, and you know you can tick all these boxes and you can be pretty sure that everything is going to work, the driver's going to be there on time, the hotels are going to be booked, everything is going to be work. So leaving very little room for spontaneity and for what travel in its essence really is, which is you can travel by going outside the gates of the school right now. Travel is not about booking a holiday. Travel is about your mind. It's about mindset. You go out of the school right now, and if you have the right mindset, if you open your eyes, you are traveling already. And you are completely surrendering to whatever's going to happen out there, and whatever you see, you know, and you might find something which you didn't see before. So travel is a mindset, okay? It's not, but the industry seems to want to package it and give people security and tell people exactly what they're going to want to do. So you see the problem here. It's almost the antithesis of what it's intended to do. It's just an industry that basically was created to solve these problems for people who wanted to be, you know, in a way safe when they travel, which is understandable at the same time. Some people want it all planned. Some people want their comfort food. Some people want their comfort food, be it dumplings, pizza, pasta, whatever it is. Incidentally, Paul Simon and Garber, he came to Sri Lanka, and he said, Miguel, we don't need fancy food. You know, we like pasta and pizza. You know, so You know, that was, I remember that comment, and it stuck with me and things like that. So, you know, even well-traveled or whatever like that, some people are more respectful than others. I don't know whether you guys have done that. So basically, there are different types of people, right? There are different types of motivation. And in terms of how people book, some people are going to book through a travel agent, and some people are going to do it on their own. When you travel, or when you travel with your family, sometimes you go on a trip that's booked, and sometimes you go on a trip that you are booking yourself through Booking.com and things like that. So, so you know, people are very, very different, right? Okay. So what Stanley Plott did is he looked at these types of people, but he looked at it and he thought, okay, the key to this story is that he created this bell curve. You're all familiar with the bell curve, right? And he started plotting people by personality, by motivations, what it is, why they travel, you know. And he was able to identify some patterns, and he realized that a destination's success, a destination for it to continue to be appealing, it needed to focus on people of a particular type, right? And so he decided to plot this, and he created this chart, right? And then basically the way this works is like this. You have innovators and early adopters, right? So they like adventure, right? They are not afraid of the unknown. They like to explore. How do you think we created the Pecos Trail? Well, the Pecos Trail was, I mean, I can assure you, I was hacking through jungle, going up, down that road, didn't know where I was going to get to, fell into ditches a number of times and stuff like that. This is not for everybody. Okay, it's not for everybody, but I kind of get a kick out of it, so I do it, right? And even to this day, you know, my wife thinks I'm a little mad, but anyhow, so those are the types. That's one type of typology of traveler. The other one is a late majority. Late majority would be people that really are going to play it safe. They're going to book with somebody that gives them everything in a package. Everything is going to be totally planned and executed and things like that. Leaving not that much room for spontaneity, but it's still okay because they go out of the country and they experience to be somebody else. Most tourists, most travelers are somewhere in the middle. A little bit of adventure, but a little bit of security and home comforts and things like that. Okay, how do they behave, these types of people? Innovators and early adopters might go to Jaffna. Who's been to Jaffna here? Okay, they may go to Jaffna. Why would they go to Jaffna? Well, Jaffna is not in any of the traditional circuits. It's simply because they feel they want to go off the beaten path. They want to go off the beaten path and see somewhere that's quite unique and different in Sri Lanka. An early or late majority might go to Ella because a lot of social media is coming out of Ella. Your friends are going to Ella and things like that, and they're sending pictures and things like that. So, you know, that stimulates other people to go to Ella. And yeah, you get a bit of an adventure in Ella. It's not mass tourism, but it is somewhere there. Okay, so those are the types of people. Now, if I was to ask you, you know, let's say, you know, I mean, we could do a survey here a little bit of how adventurous people are. But you can tell a little bit, like when you go to Goa, if you talk to tourists, to travelers, if you ask them where you're from, that's a good question. But why don't you try asking them, where have you been? Because if you ask them, where have you been in the last, say, 3 years, you get a very good profile of whether they are one or the other. Let's say, for instance, if they say, I've been to, let's say, I've been to, I don't know, Rwanda, just to name a country, or I've been to, I don't know, you know, Laos, or I've been to places that are a little bit out there, or I've been trekking in Nepal, or whatever it is, then that's one thing. But if they say, well, actually, this is our first time to Asia, we've never been to Asia, this is our first time, last holiday we were in France, and then we were in England, or whatever it was, yeah, that's one thing. But you can start drawing conclusions about the type of people by asking them where they, not only where they're from, but where they have been, where they have traveled. And you can start plotting them on this curve. Because let's go back to NPS, and let's go back to Doxy a second. If the more we travel, what do you learn when you travel? You put yourself outside of your comfort zone and you start experiencing things that are unfamiliar to you. Now, how do you respond to that? You respond to that initially with a little bit of caution, don't you? You're like, oh, the food is too spicy. Or you might get annoyed because you might be Swiss and all the trains always run on time. But here in Sri Lanka, the trains are not going to run on time. End of story. Or somebody might wiggle a head like this and you don't know what they're saying. They're saying something, but you're not quite sure whether they're saying yes, whether they're saying no. So, you know, you need to look at it like that. So, this is the type of analysis that you need to do. This is what you do when you go outside of your comfort zone. But over time, you become more tolerant, you become more accepting, you become more forgiving. You look at a destination and you think, okay, so it's different. But hold on a second, why do I travel? People travel to experience the differences. What am I complaining about? It is different, no? So this is the thing. And, you know, there's an evolution of the traveler. So this guy, let's call him Luke. Luke started by, you know, going to Paris. He's maybe an English guy. He went to Spain and things like that, where things were not that different. But then over time, he evolved and he became more respectful, more tolerant, slightly more adventurous, slightly more forgiving, and started more appreciating of the beauty that the world has to offer around us that is different to who you are. And that's really sort of the magic of travel. So the guy basically managed to evolve as a traveler, and as we all are, because you guys as well, as you start getting older and you start traveling and you start like traveling more independently, you will become hopefully more tolerant, more, you know, and more accepting of other cultures and things, and you become better travelers. That means that when you leave that destination, the fact that it was very different, the fact that the train didn't run on time, or it was too hot, or there were too many mosquitoes, or whatever it is, doesn't affect your overall perception of the country. It remains, you will continue to enthusiastically recommend the country. Do you see my point? My point is there's two things going on here, that all of us have to evolve as travelers if we want to settle into this world and be more, more settled into it, so to speak. That's very important. And, you know, and then slowly, right, but surely, right, the more we travel, right, the more we will evolve, and so, you know, we will be able to, we'll be able to sustain these metrics, NPS, and then hopefully by being more tolerant and more accepting of other cultures, you will also find that the local populations are also continue to be welcoming. So the next question is really sort of, and I'll sort of accelerate a little bit because I think we're running out of time. But so as I said before, people change over time by moving from one destination to another and traveling and traveling and traveling and becoming more educated and becoming, you know, more settled and so, you know, then again, things that I mentioned again, you know, we love spicy food. Like, you know, after traveling, you know, we became more forgiving and accepting of minor imperfections, like a late train or whatever. You know, we became more discerning and considerate towards local communities, right? So now, going back to Plog's theory, and I know I'm trying to sort of weave this story and tie it all together, but what I'm trying to tell you is that going back to Plog's story, if the destination doesn't focus on these types of people, but only focuses on these types of people, we have a big problem. Now, my question to you is, do you see Sri Lanka focusing on one particular segment or another? No. Sri Lanka is focusing on, let's say, doesn't matter to me whether you're, you know, Moroccan, or whether you're from Ecuador, or whether you're from China, or whether you're from Germany. Sri Lanka is focusing on nationalities. It's basically saying, let's go to activate some market, and then essentially it's making travel free from that market for everybody, irrespective of where they are on this bell curve. It doesn't matter to them. The only thing they're worried about is just, you know, is where you come from. And frankly, where you come from is not good enough, because it's also slightly controversial, because, you know, you don't want to be, you know, we want to welcome as many tourists as travelers as we can handle in Sri Lanka, but we don't want to, we shouldn't be looking at them and drawing lines around their ethnicity, religion, race, gender, or nationality. Why do we do that? It's pointless. I mean, why do we look at China and think, oh, you know what, all Chinese are the same? No, all Chinese are not the same. All Chinese are not the same. Some Chinese will come and will be of this particular topology, and others will be of a different topology. Do you understand? I'm like sort of getting that point through, because it's very important, and it's difficult to implement, and it's totally missing in tourism policy here in Sri Lanka. But if we don't get this right, the destination will decline. NPS will fall, Doxy will fall, and that's not to mention what decline really looks like, which is visually, which is all the negative impacts of mass tourism. We will lose our appeal, the environment will be degraded, culture will be degraded, places will be overcrowded like they are starting to be. How much carrying capacity does Sigiriya have, or the Temple of the Tooth have, or Yala National Park have? Not much. Social disruption, loss of economic control, infrastructure overload, impact on wildlife, cultural insensitivity. Do you understand? This is so key. And this is so key that is something that, unless we get right here, that's the future we're sleepwalking into. How we can discuss a little bit what you can do about it, which we're going to get to in a second. All right, and I'll just sort of move forward a little bit, but this is all basically around the same thing, right? The key is not only how we promote ourselves, but how we develop tourism. Because, you know, we need to get promotion right, so we are talking to the right people. That's what marketing, messaging, like, you know, how you do, and we need to do this 2024. Not in like they used to, like in the 1980s or whatever. Now people use social media, whatever it is, TikTok, whatever it is, but we need to master the art of communicating with people and making sure that we're talking to the right people and sending them the message, and making sure that we're not talking to the wrong people. And sorry to say wrong people, but I'm forgiving because I'm saying that they can evolve. So it's not like you're a wrong person, it's just that you are not perhaps well-traveled enough, if you like, or you are not of that particular, you know, you're essentially booking in a way, or you're behaving in a way that has a massive impact on tourism, on communities and conservation, unknowingly, because you're coming to Sri Lanka and booking a package holiday that takes you around this conveyor belt. And it essentially takes you to the same destinations all the time, and you're just one, but it's like a beehive, you're just like, you know, it's like a plague. You don't know that you're part of the plague, but you are part of the plague. Do you understand? So in this day and age, we have to be very, very conscious of how we behave and how we understand tourism, the impact that all of you guys have individually. And I'll sort of finish up, but the destination could look like this. This is a good chart to plot. So what type of tourists go to the different parts of the country, and like how it will evolve in different scenarios depending on whether we get this right or wrong, right? Again, it's about product development. The Peko Trail was designed specifically with this in mind. Why? Because it brings people that are a particular type that are okay to maybe experience, you know, that there may be a leech or two. But those that are not ready for that, the Peko Trail already sends them a very strong signal: don't come. Because if you're not prepared to have a leech on your foot, then, and that's going to freak you out, then that's a natural barrier to coming to Sri Lanka. You know, and so this is the thing, we have to master the art of this, right? So again, it's about finding our feet as a destination, understanding who we are, why, you know, people come, why people travel, why people come here, and being ruthless at protecting it, our forests, our oceans, our wildlife, and so on and so forth, and our culture. And then we almost, the industry is at a very pivotal moment, because unless we get promotion right, and unless we get product development right, as I said before, we're going to suffer the consequences that others have suffered, right? Because sustainability is not about numbers. Sustainability is about people. It's about human beings, and it's about how they behave and how conscious you are. Consciousness is the key here, the key word. Consciousness in terms of understanding the impact that you have. So when you travel, okay, please book consciously. Do your research. Be careful with social media, guys, because if you take a selfie, you know, somewhere or whatever, and that goes to all of your friends, and it looks cool, and I'm not saying that's not cool, it's super cool, but remember that you're influencing people. Don't ever forget that. And when you're influencing people, you might actually influence people who are not really ready for the destination. So these are different types of examples, but anyway, this is the last slide. I know I'm sort of running a little bit over. But yeah, I mean, we need to keep Sri Lanka clean and green, and we all need to, what I just said before, you know, try to be just more conscious in terms of the impact that you have, right? And use your social media carefully. When you promote Sri Lanka, make sure you always throw a negative, you know, so that we start, like, you know, at the individual level already segmenting, and you know, demand from the tourism industry that it has a strategy that protects the environment. Thank you.